Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
It's a new car to iRacing. It's a new championship for Ozicar, Formula Ford, and an opening round at Phillip Island. Brand new entry-level open wheeler on the iRacing service, challenging to drive but rewarding and very, very popular. Ozicar's delighted to be bringing you a new championship, and here at Simspeed TV, we're excited to be broadcasting every race. Brought to you by Sim Racing League's Locked On Lads Prestige Trophy Badge and Engraving, and in support of the No Social Hate campaign. It's going to be a very exciting one from Phillip Island. So I'm happy to be here. David Haynes with Jason Fewens, Jay Kennedy producing. We love this track, Jason.
Yeah, good evening, David. Good evening, everybody. It's a fan favourite, particularly those from this side of the world down under. It's very fast flowing, it's scenic, it's got everything. It's got slow, tight corners down at Siberia where you've really got to turn back. It's got hard braking zones at the bottom of Lukey Heights, and of course that famous straight heading down, looking out over the Bass Strait towards Tasmania. So Phillip Island here tonight with these Aussie car Formula Fords is something that's been welcomed to the iRacing community over the last few weeks since its release, and of course with Aussie cars history of Formula cars, it fits right into what we plan on broadcasting tonight.
Wow, that's a nice track with a very, very fast final corner along Gardner Straight, hit straight into the very, very quick turn one Doohan corner. In these kind of cars, always generates a really powerful slipstream. Sometimes from that run from 11 almost all the way through into Southern Loop in some of the lower horsepower cars. We'll see how it goes with this new Formula Ford. Got a lot of long, flowing corners in place. Got a couple of other overtaking opportunities like Miller Corner and like MG after Lukey Heights there. Got two 20-minute races coming up. The drivers are just finishing off their qualifying. This is what the schedule is going to look like in 2 weeks' time, going to Okayama, then Winton, Oran Park, Sandown, and Bathurst. Not bad. Those are some pretty good tracks. A lot of them either free or an absolute must-have if you're an Aussie.
Yeah, and a lot of Formula Fords have raced at all those tracks, particularly those Australian ones over the years. I'm not too sure about Okayama, but I presume so. It's often producing incredibly close racing. Slipstream with this car has proven beneficial over the last few weeks with practice with a number of these drivers. So Phillip Island is going to absolutely deliver another stellar race here tonight. So I'm looking forward to see how things pan out.
You know, if you start Googling Japanese Formula Ford, the suggestion is Japanese Formula for Happiness, which I suspect is also racing. So let's look at that grid. For race number one, Ewan Baker on pole on the front row ahead of Stuart Vaughan, Thomas Hinds, Braden Martin, Brodie Shepherd, Tim Harris. A lot of familiar Aussie car names are back and they're up front. James Chastano starting out as 7th, John Merritt in 8th, Brady Baldwin, Sean Doyle in the top 10, Glenn Riddle, Mandela Pluck there in 12th, and it's a big grid because it keeps going with Adrian Duke, Robbie Bradbury, Nathan Verney, Dennis Hancock, Braden Sagasar, and Stuart Crawford in 18th is about the top half.
Yeah, turning up the page, Adrian Schultz at 19, Jacob Wallmeyer out of 20, Kirk Broadhurst, Sam Chapman to his right, Dyson Freeman out of 23, and Douglas Gowans is our driver gridded up on P24. Sean McKenzie and Tony Barker are side by side off the next row. Ira Felberg and Ash Davis behind those two. Matthew Harriott and Daniel Fritz rounding out 29 and 30. The field is still going. John Snell, Cameron Freeman, Darren Shannon, Brendan Nielsen, Ben Doherty and Matthew Walker. That's 36 cars so far. And rounding out the field, Peter Wilkinson and Scotty Jordan. So a depth of talent from the front through to the back. So a great range of drivers out there tonight, and I'm sure we are going to see some stellar racing.
Going to be a standing start for these cars. They're on pretty skinny tyres. They've got a little bit more horsepower than a V, and they're going to get away down towards turn number 1. Pole sitter Ewan Baker, I think it's translated it pretty well, but what a buzzing mess of Formula Fords behind him. He's immediately across onto the racing line. Second place man Stuart Vaughan following through. You can see Braden Martin immediately pressuring him from third, but the tyres are cold and sketchy for everyone as we get started with a 25 degrees Celsius track temperature. Across the little crest there at turn number 2 at Southern Loop. Tony Baker's one of the first drivers off into the grass. Everyone else still trying to feel out this car and how it races.
Yes, a lot of drivers out there that are new to the Aussie car, so there'll be a bit of a learning curve here tonight, but everyone pretty well through the first sequence of corners. A bit of a brake lock up there into Miller Corner, and one of the locked-on cars is sideways. It's going to cause some carnage.
Tim Harris was one of several drivers to lock up there, and he ended up sideways, and a couple of cars couldn't avoid him. No massive pile up there. Most of the field still managed to get through, but it just goes to show how difficult that big braking zone was.
Yeah, I think Timmy Harris might have a fair bit of damage. Looks like he's trying to crab his way back to the pits, but back in front we have a four-way battle leading this little group before we have a bit of a gap behind, and one of Aussie cars' fan favourites, Ewan Baker, in amongst that group at the moment. As you can see them all make their way down towards Leaky Heights for the first time on lap 1 of 11. Tyres should be getting just about up to temperature now, so they should be feeling a little bit more comfortable and a little bit more confident in what the car's going to do underneath them.
Pretty gutsy from Vaughan going side by side through the hay sheds back there. Managed to make it work and get to the lead of the race, but then they are so fast through that final corner, absolutely flat out, and a long hit straight here. It's almost 1.5 kilometers with the pedal at 100% throttle. The car behind will get a massive slipstream. You see Ewan Baker not only going through into the lead of the race, almost dragging Braden Martin there through with him, but not quite, as Vaughan manages to defend with the inside line here. Baker's out wide, Baker's got the grass, and he spun off towards the gravel, pushed him too hard around the outside of Southern Loop.
Yeah, he won't be the first car to get caught out there tonight, I reckon, out wide. But you can see another car in the background getting in all sorts of trouble. So what was a battle of 4 with a group behind has now turned into 3, and that margin back to the second group is well and truly extended. So this little group of 3 has got to play it pretty smart now, not trip over each other, because they have got the benefit of pulling away from the cars behind. That group is consisting of Stuart Vaughan, Braden Martin and Thomas Hinds. So very experienced drivers, particularly in open wheel formula cars, so they'll know what they have to do. Head down early in race number 1.
So the leading trio now just Vaughan, Martin and Hinds. Here's Manzella Pluck, clearly teammates with Baker, unless that is Baker and the graphic is wrong.
I think they might be teammates because I reckon they're both from Mandela over in New Zealand.
That
may
car
have some damage, flat
in
tyres.
the front left is not right at all. It's sitting down low. That tyre, the rim is on the pavement, and the toe, I think, is all wrong on that front left as well. So trying to get that one around to the pit lane. Now, I don't think an early stop is a horrible thing if you're going to have a required pit stop. There's just a little bit of wheel-to-wheel contact at Southern Loop. It's broken the suspension on the 14, and so is that probably.
Yeah, so that was that spin we saw in the background of the live pictures earlier on, coming out of Southern Loop just after Ewan Baker looped it. So Braden Martin, car 09, and it might have been Thomas Hinds, I reckon, coming together into turn 1 on lap number 3.
Yeah, so now Stuart Vaughan leads significantly from Hinds, who's now fallen back into the clutches of the next group, Merritt and Verney. Has Martin got much damage? Is he going to get up to speed? He's lost a little more out there. Robbie Bradbury, Jacob Wallmeyer, Aidan Schultz have gone through on him for position. This is a replay of your top 3. Still very early in this race. Going in towards turn number 1. Oh, Vaughan, the nose is just underneath the rear tyres of Martin as they go through one. Hinz has to take avoiding action. All three of them lost a little bit of time, some worse than others.
Yeah, I'm sure the stewards will have a look at that at the end of the race, but at the moment we're just focusing on what's happening on track. We're looking back from Robbie Bradbury, who's currently sitting fifth. As you can see on your relative, he's got his mirrors full, as he's got plenty of company around him. That's car number 36 as well. Sorry, that is Robbie Bradbury in the KFC car. Making their way down into the Lukey Heights now. Jacob Wallmeyer there in the 444 leading this little group. Looking pretty comfortable at the moment there in P5.
There you go, looking for pit entry. Goes Robbie Bradbury. Unique little pit entry that it is here at Phillip Island. Approaching at speed until you hit that cone. Tell me a Formula 4 doesn't have a pit limiter.
I can't tell you. I have done laps, but I can't remember whether it was. I was probably struggling to stay on track, to be honest. But it's interesting because these cars do retain a fair bit of slipstream. So Robbie's pulled out of that little pack there. He might have felt like he was being held up, but if he comes out in a group again that either is slowing him down or he's by himself, he just might find the worse for wear as the rest of this race goes on. A few of these drivers probably still trying to work out the best tactic. It is going to be a 6-round season, so it is early in the season. There'll be a lot of learning curves out of this particular race.
Absolutely. Still Vaughan leading by 3 seconds over Hinz and Merritt. Looking at them here, second and third at the moment. Oh, they might be neighbours if they're both from Echuca, Victoria. I guess we're laying that out on Hinz, even if he didn't supply that information to the graphic. A weekend in Echuca gets me chuffed, but they are battling over second and third here, and I'm not sure I'm seeing a whole lot of aggression from Merritt, who we're more used to seeing, I think, in sort of GT style cars.
Yeah, that Pulse Racing livery out there at the moment, very distinctive on track. So it looks like he pulls out of the draft, going for a pass back down what is Gardner Straight. Looks like he gets the job done going into turn number 1. Thomas Hinz pulls back in behind. So these guys will have to work together if they plan on bridging that 2.7 second gap to Vaughan out in front. This is Braden Martin looking for the long way around turn 1. Looks like he gets the job done on potentially Jacob Wallmeyer, his next target down the road. Another half or second down the road will be Nathan Verney. Another car off on the right. Brendan Doherty.
Seeing if that was a car in the lead lap, and I think it's not. Doherty might have stopped and then again been struggling with those cold tyres. I suspect that's what it is. So they've got to be very careful on the race starts on the cold tyres, and then after their pit stops, again, that same level of caution has to be reapplied. We are looking here at Brady Baldwin because he is the highest running car that has served his pit stop, compulsory stop in race number 1. Sean Doyle also has, and slipstreams past him into that position now. Very reflective number 7 for Brady Baldwin.
Yeah, absolute standout paint there. You can definitely see him in amongst the pack.
Do my hair in that, and so could you.
Not a lot of hair to brush, Dave.
Go.
Oh, Brady getting a little bit wide on the exit of Southern Loop there. You can see the back end just stepping out, but he does a pretty good job to keep it under control. Not losing a lot of time, but just losing a little bit of momentum as he made his way out of that corner.
Yeah, not massive tyres on a Formula Ford, are they? Sort of the grip in balance with the power means that you've really got to drive a lot of angle there through turn number 1. But then turn number 2 here, a little offline, there's less grip, the back is just walking away from him. The exit, almost just plain drive it off.
Yeah, there was a bit of a battle to keep that thing going in a straight line. These Formula Fords have proven to be actually a little bit quicker, I reckon, or I believe from my testing, than what the Skip Barbers are here on the iRacing server. But they haven't got the downforce, of course, with the lack of a rear wing, but still enough to produce some really good racing out there on track as we're seeing at the moment. not opting to dive into the pits this time for Brady Baldwin. He's going around for another circuit of
These are our two that have already completed their stops. Woolmeyer and Schultz are on the lane heading out right now. So looking at Doyle and Baldwin as a potential for a podium even when all of it shakes through, because everyone from 11th position on that timing column up hasn't stopped yet. So your Vaughns, Merritts, Hinses all the way down to Mandela, Pluck, and Baldwin and Doyle here have they got a fair bit of speed in a slipstream. These cars in the straight line, as well as you see Vernie off there. Going to help him running long. He doesn't need that before his pit stop. What am I saying? 230. Some outliers, but maybe 230 and a little more kilometers an hour possible at the end into turn one in the straight line here.
Yeah, that's plenty fast enough if you're trying to jump on the Yankers after that slipstream down the Doohan Straight here. You can see Thomas Hinds making the absolute most of that there as he tucks it underneath the back of Merritt. He's still sitting in P2. We'll have a look at a VRS replay, sorry, Simspeed replay.
Bernie would have done. Oh, that's across Lukey Heights, isn't it? He's turned in with a little too much gusto. These cars have got a bit of a bubble on the right-hand side of the chassis to give your hand on the H-pattern gear shifter a little more room. It's an interesting little touch. Braden Sagasar very often resplendent in purple. He's got a bit of curb on the inside, kicked the tail out a little bit, and then a little more almost delicate rejoins. I keep going. Oh.
Yeah, not delicate, but probably the safest way potentially with some cars coming out through the exit of Siberia there. At least he's off the racing line as he turns it round. So not doing himself any favours, probably losing a lot of time, but guaranteeing he doesn't get the risk of a penalty. So out in front, Stuart Vaughan, that gap is still 2.6 seconds. So it looks like he's keeping that gap to the second and third, Merritt and Hinds in the background. We've lost Hinds, here he is into the pits. He's the first of the top three to blink.
Indeed, Braden Martin carries on. So does Ewan Baker, Dyson Freeman, and Mr. Ozicar himself from out west. And Peter Wilkinson from a little closer to home for me, but far enough away that I'm safe.
Are you ever safe with Peter? That's the question. So Brady Baldwin getting a little bit offline there, just having to roll out of that. He's still in a nice little battle as he makes his way down into Lukey Heights there at the moment. That's car number 74 still in front of him, Sean Doyle. So these two have been at it now for the last 4 or 5 laps. And Brady hasn't been able to take anything out of Sean since Sean took the position just after they had their pit sequence about halfway through the race.
Let's watch the slipstream, because you can tell 4 or 5 car lengths back coming through that final corner. He's hardly even following in line, and it closes up one, closes up another, and he'll be right to the gearbox of that Formula Ford 1600 in front right as they come through turn number 1, which requires a little bit of a lift there. Clearly not flat out in these cars when it can be almost in, say, the Formula 4 that's got wings on it. They're very sideways in the leading car. Here's Hinds out of the pit stop, I'm assuming. Chastanov. Hinds is a bit up the road from them, about 4 seconds, but on his outlap on cold tyres.
Car 42 and car 25 side by side into, I keep going to call it Honda Hairpin, but it is now renamed Miller Corner. Chastanov with the inside line gets the better drive as they make their way down to Siberia, but this is a nice little battle of, we'll call it a gaggle of Formula Fords, about 6 or 7 cars on track at the moment. Chastanov leading the way, punching the hole through the air with everybody else tucked in formation, slipstreaming along the back sequence of the track as they make their way past the hayshed.
Collective noun suggestion. Can we call it a beam of rays?
You can call it whatever you want, Dave. That's our new terminology, and officially here on Simspeed TV, a beam of rays.
Great challenge for the drivers as the car's a little sketchy across the crest of Loopy Heights, and then of course braking downhill, sharply downhill into the tight MG hairpin is always a challenge. Is Merritt leaving the pit lane as that pack we were watching round the final corner at speed and will start to bear down upon these drivers. So with just 4 drivers yet to stop at this time, it's Vaughan, Martin, Thalberg and Wilkinson. Sean Doyle, his early stop, is looking pretty good because Merritt and Baldwin behind him now could be the net leaders. Is this Ewan Baker off the road at 1, and look at that pack of cars, that beam of rays that are going to swallow him up.
Yes,
Ewan
second
funny, but when
spin.
you try to use it with a straight face, I'm not sure it holds up.
Lucky no one can see our faces. So Ewan Baker back on track, obviously losing a good bunch of positions there. That puts him outside the top 10 well and truly now with 3 laps to go. Stuart Vaughan, our race leader, diving into the pits. He will be effectively one of our last cars on track, along with Braden Martin and Ira Philberg. And I think Peter Wilkinson, as we see Ira dive into the pits as well. So getting down towards the end of the race and these drivers making their compulsory pit stop. I think 4 tyres is required as part of their pit stop sequence. So everybody required to take the same penalty as a pit stop here tonight in both races.
These are 4 lug tyres, 4 of them. I'd be hard pressed to change 1 in 30 seconds personally, depending on what kind of.
That's why you're behind the microphone, not behind a rattle gun.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking a big compressed air rattle gun. I'm thinking, a little 18 volt, Ryobi or Salts or other brands are available. So now everyone's been through pit lane. Stuart Vaughan is out front, 4 seconds from Sean Doyle, who has 8 more laps of temperature in his tyres and has been pulling that group of Merritt and Baldwin along. There is the gap, and it diminishes on this outlap as Vaughan continues to tippy-toe around trying to find tyre temperature and pressure. Here's Thomas Hinz. He's pressing on. You saw that through turn number 1. He knows if he can just get another 1.5 seconds, he can hook onto the slipstream of the podium. Braden Martin is going to struggle to do the same.
Yeah, that looked like they exited turn 1 into Southern Loop as well. So Braden Martin finding the grass there on the dying laps of the race. But the battle at the moment on screen is for second. This is Sean Doyle and John Merritt. And of course Brady Baldwin there in the background separating the 3 cars on screen. So probably one of our closest battles on track at the moment, and it is for the second and third spot on the podium with a couple of laps to go. We'll have a quick look at the replay here, and this might be the exit of Stuart Vaughan, no? Okay, Braden Martin exiting the pit, so this will give us a clear indication of exactly how it all unfolded. Cold tyres obviously playing a factor.
Sees those guys coming, give them the space. There is no grip whatsoever. Walks out wide, gets a tiny bit of the grass, and when the tyres have got no grip, the grass has got no grip. The coefficient of grip between them is no grip. Braden Martin discovers that as we're going to start the final lap. Stuart Vaughan still holding a 3.5 second lead, so it's diminished about a second on this lap. Can Merritt and Doyle close him in on this final one, or will they squabble for the places on the podium, second and third? Brady Baldwin not far off in 4th at all.
Yeah, Merritt taking the inside line here as the final lap. The white flag is flown, so Merritt might have been just biding his time sitting behind Doyle there for the last 6 or 7 laps, making sure he had the tyres and the fuel to put on a challenge on the last lap. But Doyle's not going to just take this lane down. He takes a big dive through Miller Curve. He's going to find himself on the wrong side of the track as the Honda hairpin, Miller Corner switches back, tight right-hander. Looks like Merritt's got the job done there. Looks like he can go defensive again into Siberia. So last half of the lap, it's going to come pretty close. But you can see who's snuck onto the back of this. Either the cars going side by side. Brady Myers is in this as well. Sorry, Brady Baldwin.
Yeah, he's mighty close as they continue to battle over second, third. Almost given up on catching Vaughan, which is likely as he's 3.5 seconds ahead still. Battle downhill on the brakes into MG. Very, very easy to lock a brake there. This is certainly the kind of car where this position you could catch someone and leapfrog them just in time the line for a photo finish, and John Merritt, doesn't he know it, as he tries to make that challenging for Doyle and Baldwin. Stuart Vaughan keeping the car on the road, running along in the first stint, takes the first win of Ozicar Formula Ford, and they're going to fan out for a photo finish at the line, but John Merritt will hold off Sean Doyle and Brady Baldwin.
Yeah, top four across the line there, as you can see. Stuart Vaughan, our race winner, pretty well from the moment the lights went green. He took control of the race and did everything he had to do. Looks like they're still going 2-3 wide further back in the field. One of the Aussie cars on screen at the moment. Car number 72, this is Ira Felberg in sequence, currently in 20th position. He follows another one of those Pulse tuning cars across the line. Looks like he makes it through. Cameron Freeman on screen as well. So that's the first half of the field across the line, and we are going to get ready for race number 2, where we're going to do it all over again, but we'll have a look at our results.
When we can get them, clicky, Stuart Vaughan 3.5 seconds from John Merritt. Oh, so close with Sean Doyle and Brady Baldwin. Hins in 5th, and then Wallmeyer, Chastanov, Shepherd, Schultz, and Broadhurst. Got Sam Chapman, Robbie Bradbury, Ewan Baker back in 13th, not what he would have wanted. Same for Braden Martin. Those two were in the hunt for a win up front earlier on. Stuart Crawford, Dyson Freeman, Matthew Harriott there in 17th. Daniel Fritz, Tony Baker, and Ira Felberg. About the top half of the field.
In car number 19 in P21 is Cameron Freeman. He was followed across the line by Nathan Verney with Darren Shannon out of P23. Peter Wilkinson only half a second behind in P24. Douglas Gowan, Brendan Nealon, Mandela Pluck, Dennis Hancock, Sean McKenzie and Ash Davis round out your top 30. As we flick over the page, we've got the a couple of cars finally finishing off the race, and they are Matthew Walker, John Snell, the last of the cars on the lead lap, and then cars 1 lap down, Adrian Duke, and we've got Ben Doherty, Tim Harris 2 and 3 laps down respectively. Braden Sagasar, after a spin early on, we saw him, he must have retired and finished 6 laps down, and then Glenn Riddell 11 laps, and Scotty Jordanson, the last car. I don't think actually Scotty even took the grid there, Dave, so we'll see whether he grids up for race number 2 and comes back.
For race number 2, it looks like a purely progressive grid from our finishing results of race 1 in towards race 2, so that's great for some and more challenging for others, like Ewan Baker. Started on the front row for race number 1, now will find himself a bit deeper in the field for race number 2. That one's not far away, so stick with us here on Simspeed TV, because we will be back in a moment with race 2 from Phillip Island.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
Well, welcome back, and what an interesting look into the iRacing Formula Ford we have had from the first race of Ozicar Formula Ford. With one race still to go in this round, it will be a near identical race again, 20 minutes, compulsory pit stop. It is not a quick all-four tyre change with these cars because they're not quite built for that. It's possible, but they're not quite built for it. But what we did see was a car that is certainly challenging to drive on the limit and produces a pretty powerful slipstream, the high average speeds that Phillip Island gives us. Did you find similar there then, Jason?
Yeah, the slipstream in these things is more than I expected it would be. So as long as you've got a nice clean car and a good run out of the corner, you'll definitely get the benefit of the draft, particularly down the likes of Doing Straight. The rest of the circuit, I think you're pretty well just got to try a braking opportunity, because there's not a lot of draft opportunity around here, Phillip Island, other than Doing Straight. But it's all about setting up the corner before and getting a good run so you can potentially challenge for a position or a change under brakes.
The rest of the circuits might be a little different as we go to Okayama, Winton, Oran Park, Sandown and Bathurst for the remainder of the calendar. They're gridding up now for race number 2 in the order that they finished race number 1. Aggressive grid there, and we'll have a look through it because Vaughan, Merritt, Doyle, Baldwin, Hinz, Wallmeyer, Chastanoff, Shepherd and Schultz and Kirk Broadhurst is the top 10, but I'm looking back at who gained a lot from their qualifying position in race 1 and therefore improved their grid position from race 1 into race 2, and I'm seeing Kirk Broadhurst came from 21st to 10th, Aiden Schultz from 19th to 9, and Jacob Wallmeyer from 20th to 6th. So a bunch of those guys gaining big time, including Sean Doyle from 10th on the grid to 3rd in race number 1, starting from 3rd for race number 2. They're all going to get going, some pulling smoothly away, some lighting up the tyres a little bit. Difficult to get it away from a standing start, but your back-to-back pole sitter Stuart Vaughan has done it pretty well there. Closing in on him from behind there, though, with John Merritt and Sean Doyle. Doyle right in behind him. Merritt looking around the outside of turn number 1. Once again, cold tyres all round. Track temperature is 25 Celsius. We've got Aiden Schultz off the road, and he's going to find the gravel. We'll just stop him before he ends up in the ocean with the penguins.
Yeah, it looked like he had his tyres locked there for quite a while, and it was inevitable that the tyre wall was coming at a great rate of knots. But lap 1 of 11 here on screen, and already Aiden Schultz coming to grief, but he's got plenty of time to get things back under control. But a change for the lead. This will be the first time I think that we see Merritt out in front as he gets the job done on Stuart Vaughan. So as you can see, a big puff of smoke in the background as a heap of cars lock up under brakes. But more importantly, out in front we have a clean race at the moment with the drivers showing plenty of room. Braden Martin there on screen leading the KFC car as they make their way down past the Hayshed for the first time here, race number 2. So Braden Martin showing plenty of pace in race number 1, buried a little bit deeper in the field. As you can see, Ewan Baker just in front of him as well. So Braden will be doing a pretty good job to try and get on the back of Ewan and use that slipstream to pull him through the field.
Down into MG for the first time, and the tyres hooked together there for those drivers. Matthew Harriet, I'm not sure who he's quite with. Is he still locked together with, could be Braden Martin or James Chastanoff. There's a whole, it's not Chastanoff, it's Darren Shannon. but Chastanov is on pit lane with a whole handful of other drivers who've decided, let's get out of that and stop early. Worked pretty well for a couple of drivers like Doyle and others in the first race, and so it's proving very, very popular in race number 2. Staying out though and enjoying the clean air that worked for him in race number 1, Stuart Vaughan. John Merritt in behind. And then Brady Baldwin, Thomas Hinds, Jacob Allmeyer, Shepherd, and Ewan Baker up into 7th now, starting from 15th or 13th on the grid.
So we have Stuart Vaughan back out in
Baldwin,
front.
massive
Great lock up. Yeah, big puff of smoke there. You can see him out on the grass. He is going to have to come back a long way from that, and of course his tyres are going to be dirty, so it's going to take another half a lap to get them cleaned up again before he gets back up to speed. So very costly there for Brady, but again, in race number 1 we saw he had the speed to mix it with the guys up the front, so luckily for him he's got another 9 laps up his sleeve to get his head back in the game and make up some of that time. So some of those cars that dove into the pits on lap number 1 are back out again now. Sean Doyle, I think, is leading that little group, followed by Chastanov. So Nathan Verney on screen.
You had a look at Matthew Walker a second ago there as well, and we heard from him relatively recently, that he's gone and 3D printed a replica of the Formula Ford wheel that he sticks onto his wheelbase. Right as I started talking about him, he looped it at Lukey Heights.
So Sam Chapman diving into the pits now as well. He's followed by Brady Shepherd. So a couple of cars, Braden Martin again on pit lane. So a couple of guys taking the page out of the early pit stop playbook. But out in front, Thomas Hinds is on the back of Stuart Vaughan. John Merritt back out in front in that Pulse Tuning Formula Ford F1600 out at the moment, leading the way. So he's got his mirrors full, but I'm sure John's a wily old character, and he's not the first time he's found himself at the front of the pack, so he'll know what he has to do to stay there for the moment.
Yeah, our leading trio at the moment. Baker and Wallmeyer behind. Baker's just made up another spot, so now he's in 4th and looking to charge up to that leading group. Absolutely could do it. And then Baker, Baldwin, Freeman. This is Tim Harris. Easy spot in the locked-on car. Adrian Duke, easy to spot in the coffee car. Brady Sagasar in purple and Sean McKenzie. So he didn't have a good race 1 if he started from 29th on the grid, but he's up into 14th now. Part of that because he hasn't stopped and a lot of other drivers have. Brody Shepherd is the leading of all of the drivers to have stopped. He's just done it, and there's a pack of cars that pitted at the end of lap 1 to have just a tiny bit more tyre temperature in behind him here, and it's Doyle, Chastanov, Martin, and Broadhurst. That's the 4 in the screen.
A couple of teammates on there on screen at the moment making their way through at the back of this little group, so I'm sure they'll be talking to each other. Looks like they're tucked in underneath the back of Sean Doyle as well. So some Aussie car veterans amongst this little group here. They've done plenty of laps together over the years in different formulas of vehicles, so they'll know what they have to do to work together and pull that gap in on the cars in front. But out in front, leading this one, Stuart Vaughan taking control again. Looks like, don't tell me that's Ewan Baker. No, Dyson Freeman off at turn number 1.
Baldwin, who we saw locking up at Miller Corner, has been off the road again. 4th place finisher from race 1 this time. The two of them in towards turn number 1, side by side. One driver on the tight line, one driver out wide on the nasty stuff, and they touch wheels. That would obviously happen so easily in these open wheelers. Pretty wide track compared to the body width as well. It really seems like there are long suspension arms, like a spider.
So Stuart Vaughan leading this one again. John Merritt still tucked underneath his rear gearbox as they make their way down to Lukey Heights again for the 4th time, race number 2 here tonight. Just watching that gap very closely back to Ewan Baker. It's 2.9 seconds off the lead, so we'll keep an eye on that, whether he can actually start to pull a gap in on these guys in front. Depends if they start tripping over each other. He's not going to do it because he's going to dive into the pits, take the opportunity to get his pit stop done.
See a black flag, so that pit entry must have been all good. He definitely looked like he attacked the line aggressively. 72 kilometre an hour pit lane speed limit here on iRacing at Phillip Island, which is a little on the high side, I think, given the width of the lane and all that, but that's what it is. And I think Baker decided he couldn't catch this group. Merritt a little on the defensive into the hairpin braking zone. Vaughan and Hinds just following him along at the moment. Got Wallmeyer back behind that. Here is Ewan Baker off the pit lane speed limit, and you can see a whole group of cars that have already made their stops barreling down pit straight at him. Brody Shepherd's going to get past easily. Doyle, Chasnoff, Martin, they've all got more tyre pressure and temperature than him as well.
Yeah, we saw Braden Martin come unstuck while coming out of the pits there in race number 1. Looks like Ewan Baker's done a pretty good job to avoid him as they come barreling past down the main straight. There's not a lot he could do to defend there other than just hold his line out wide and let him go. This is Braden Martin challenging Baker for the move down the inside through Stoner Corner. Get a little bit of a Stoner drift happening as they make their way through there before the hard, heavy braking zone that is Miller Corner.
Thomas Hinds and Jacob Wallmeyer from 3rd and 4th coming into pit lane looking for their crew. And at the same time, Vaughan and Merritt still on track, challenging for the lead. They've got to be aware that if they battle each other hard right now, those other drivers who are maybe in a little cleaner air or not battling could undercut them. I suspect Hinds will probably rejoin the race a little ahead of Shepherd, but that's always a bit of the question mark, is who are you really racing, and have you covered them off with the different strategy?
Yeah, it's a bit of a funny one from Hinds. I really had the thought that he was going to go to the absolute death knock of this race before he dived into the pits, but on lap 6 of 11 he's almost split it in half. You can see he's on the move again now as he just makes his way past the pit exit cone. There's a barrel
that I would have thought
coming through there.
And they're 3 wide, approaching him on the pit exit. 4 wide, the inevitable happens, a little touch. Everyone keeps their nose in front of their tail. That was a heart-in-mouth moment. Is it Chastity with the bright rims there, who all sorts of trying to save it. Now his teammate Braden Martin cops a little tap, goes to the inside and gets back on the circuit. Doyle leads up the cars that have pitted ahead of Chasnoff and Shepherd. Here's what it looked like from high above Chastity's roll hoop. To the extreme left, 3 wide, looking to get just a little bit more space. His rear wheel gets tagged there.
So you can see Ewan Baker on screen. He is now in front of Braden Martin after Braden just getting caught up with a little bit of a tangle there through Southern Loop on this lap. But out in front, the leaders are still circulating and going for another lap around the circuit. This is 7 of 11, so we are counting down towards the back end of our Ozicar Phillip Island Formula Ford experience here tonight. Stuart Vaughan still leading John Merritt. The gap back to P3 is a massive 26 seconds, so these guys here will be looking to pit, I guess, in the next 2 or 3 laps to get their compulsory pit stop done. So Jacob Wallmeyer on screen. He was one of our biggest movers in race number 1. He's currently sitting back in P19, so something's happened to him that we haven't caught on screen. He's got the company of one of the New Zealand cars in the try and get a bit of an idea of how this is all unfolded.
More like loopy heights. I know he didn't get a full rotation, but as he's turned it in, lifted off the throttle, big weight transfer in these short wheelbase cars. He stepped out on him and couldn't follow the racing track. Both going for pit lane at the same time, Stuart Vaughan and John Merritt. John Merritt, then you're at the whims of how early the driver in front of you wants to slow down for that pit lane speed limit, which Merritt might have been a little more aggressive with it if he wasn't following Vaughan. two drivers yet to take pit lane, Brendan Nealon and Matthew Walker. So Vaughan and Merritt hoping to come out ahead of this pack of Doyle, Chastanoff, Shepherd and Hinds.
Yeah, with the two leaders diving into the pit line, unless third and fourth do the same, we may have a new leader, but it's going to be pretty interesting to see where these guys on screen come out, whether the undercuts work for them being so early in the race.
Oh,
that's not going to help.
Doyle around, everyone manages to avoid him. There's one forming forward width to the inside, but it's cost him big time as Chastanoff, Shepherd and Hinds go through into the contending positions. Here's Vaughan off Merritt off the pit lane. Chastanoff is still going through the final corner with Shepherd and Hinds in close company.
Looks like Merritt might have lost a little bit of time during the pit sequence as well. Looks he's a couple of car lengths further back than what he was leading into the pit stop sequence.
Vaughan had an absolutely ripping pit stop, the likes of which I've never seen anyone else match. Everyone else is sort of at 31, 32, 33 second tyre changes, and he's got 29.4. Absolutely no one close. So I don't know how you pull that off with anything other than luck, but it's very good for Stuart Vaughan.
I dare say his pit crew will be getting ice creams at the end of this. That's a pretty remarkable effort.
They'll be getting a case each.
So Brendan Nealon is our race leader at the moment. The Pulse tuning car, you can see a bit further back, Matthew Walker as well, P2. They are yet to stop. And then in the background, you can see Stuart Vaughan, effectively our race leader, out on track, and he has got some clear track in front of him and a clean set of heels behind him. A little bit of a wiggle there from another one of the Pulse tuning cars. As Matthew Walker's off track just after we started to talk him up there in P2, he's got to dive into the pits again, so he's on the grass as he's making his way down to Lukey Heights. Just got to watch that re-entry there, make sure he does it nice and safe.
Gonna look at another replay. Oh, that's a lock-up, and that doesn't make a corner. For, Ash Davis. So, this group of drivers fully 7 seconds or so behind Stuart Vaughan, who's the net race leader. That's Hinds going very aggressively around the outside of turn number one, holding off Chastanoff and Shepherd. Martin and Ewan Baker close in on this pack now, which is for third position. Vaughan's in a good spot, Merritt's in a good spot, and this is for the final step on the podium the way it's going with 3 laps to go.
Yeah, very hard to go around the outside here. Looks like James Chastanoff does challenge him, but he's got the inside for the switchback at Siberia, so a little bit of grip on the outside of the Miller corner there is just proving enough to keep Chasty's nose in it as Hinds still goes side by side through the back part of the circuit. The guys behind this little battle just don't know which way to go, whether they got to pick a side, and at the moment looks like Brody Shepherd's going to try and thread the needle between the two of them.
Almost contact there as Martin had a bit of a lock-up going down towards MG, trying to stay in this pack. Brendan Nealon pits, and that means everyone has now. Stuart Vaughan will go through into first, Merritt will go through into second, and this battle will go through into third with 2 more laps to go for them to all sort it out. It's good for Vaughan with clean pair of heels, look good for Merritt with a paddock of space all to himself, but behind they're going 3 wide down towards turn number 1. Surely that can't work, especially for the guy on the outside. Thomas Hinds in the marbles, in the dirty stuff, loses out to Shepherd into third. Chasty looking to now go around the outside of the southern loop, but again he finds no grip off the racing line out there offline as well. Hinds might be able to hold on to that one, and I think Baker's getting a bit racier at the back of this pack as well.
Currently third through to 7th, separated by a mere 0.4 of a second. This is as close as we want to see at the moment with these 4 or 5 cars on track. Just see Brody Shepherd there potentially making a little bit of a gap. He's got a 2/10. Oh, is that him off?
Nope.
No, it might have been a lap car. Just doing a pretty good job of getting out of the way. I know I wouldn't want to look in my mirrors and see this little battle behind me because I'd be doing exactly the same thing. Just rolling out of it. Let these guys get on with what they're here to do. Fight over the final step on the podium.
Hinz had a pretty long stop, if I'm reading this right. So we're talking about Vaughan with a really, really good pit stop of 29 seconds. Hinz, like 36. So that's, you know, realistically, it's sort of a 5.5 second difference there. If you put him 5 seconds further up the road, he'd be with John Merritt. Instead, he's back there in this group who are again going to go 3 wide down towards turn number 1. Again, the driver with the most momentum is around the outside in the form of Thomas Hinz, but that's not where the grip is. Don't tell him that. He'll gain 2 positions going around the outside of turn number 1, gives him the inside and the best racing line for Southern Loop, where he parks it and checks up Brody Shepherd a little bit. Wheel-to-wheel, face-to-face contact between Shepherd and Chastanoff there, and Chasty gets through. His teammate of Braden Martin looks to follow. Baker still just watching them as they're on the final lap.
Yeah, Thomas Hinz doing that same move around the outside of turn 1 for 3 laps in a row, so he's pretty well got the confidence that the grip was on the outside there at turn number 1. A lot further back in the field, though. This is car number 64, the iconic Glenn Riddell in the Pulse Tuning paint scheme. He's got his hands full at the moment, but the battle for third is what we're seeing on our screen. This is where all the action is. It could be anyone's race. Just a little bit of contact, and Ewan Baker could find himself in amongst this, but at the moment he's sitting at the back of this, just waiting for an opportunity.
The locked-on teammates are side by side, and that's really helping Thomas Hinz on this final lap as he gets away from this group, and Chastity and Martin are playing for friendly bragging rights here with Shepherd and Ewan Baker right in behind, breaking down in towards MG. Chastity's going to hold on to it, and Shepherd wants in on it, and they're so close to wheel contact, but the checkered flag is out. It's Stuart Vaughan. He's on a tear in Ozicar Formula Ford. Clean sweeping at Phillip Island. Not a bad result there for John Merritt in second, and Hinz able to break free from the pack and take third. But who's going to be in fourth? The high-speed camera out 3 wide. Photo finish 4th, 5th, and 6th. I think Braden Martin's actually tipped it away from... No. Dead heat. Chastanoff and Martin and Shepherd, and what on earth has happened there? What?
It's the car 101 doing his best impersonation of some donuts on the straight as they greet the checkered flag, but there is carnage sprawn all across the track in the background. There's Nathan Verney there looking at the cars facing the wrong way, struggling to get that thing going. You can see the front wheel disconnected completely on the right hand side of his little Formula Ford there. I'm just trying to work out who that was in that 101 doing the donuts down the straight. It would have been a pretty wild ride. I reckon it was Sam Chapman there looking north-south as he made his way across the finish line. So a replay on screen, this will give us a better idea. Looks like it might have happened a bit further up the field.
I'm guessing someone's gone out wide in the final corner, spun to the inside wall, and then rolled. That's one way to take a check. I like that one. Come over and say thanks for all your hard work, Barney.
It's not the conventional way, but it's got him plenty of airtime and something for us to talk about.
Potentially going to have another look at that one. So this is Stuart Crawford. Drives off the road in the final corner. Hits the wall. It's not a rallycross car. It's a bump rejoining. Rolls. Parks in the middle of the track.
Oh, wow. Did somebody say KFC?
There's no wicked wings on that thing. They're wingless race cars. Stuart Vaughan, what a performance in a really challenging car in a very, very deep and large field. John Merritt and Thomas Hinz. Then Chastanoff and Martin in a dead heat. Chastanoff just ahead at that 4th decimal place on the timing, and Brody Shepherd, my goodness, not far behind at all. And then Ewan Baker, Braden Sagasar, Sean Doyle, Jacob Wallmeyer completing the top 10 of race number 2. Then comes Glenn Riddle, Kirk Broadhurst, Ash Davies, Sam Chapman, Mandela Pluck, Dennis Hancock, Tony Baker, Dyson Freeman, Sean McKenzie, and Robbie Bradbury. And how many other cars were on the lead lap? 21st, Douglas Gowans, and Tim Harris, John Snell, Cameron Freeman, Adrian Duke, Peter Wilkinson, Darren Shannon, Brendan Nealon, Ira Felberg, Daniel Fritz in 30th, still on the lead lap, as was Matthew Harriott and Matthew Walker. Lap down, Stuart Crawford, Nathan Verney, Ben Doherty, and retirements, Brady Baldwin, Aidan Schultz, and not taking the start again, Scott Jordison. So, I mean, give me a reaction to that just very, very quickly.
A little bit gobsmacked. It's absolutely not what I was expecting as we saw that gaggle of cars make their way around onto the straight to greet Barney with a checkered flag. I'm sure the drivers weren't expecting to see that KSE park smack bang in the middle of the circuit as well, but unfortunately for Stuart, I don't think he had a lot of control about where the car ended up. I think it was only 3 wheels left on the wagon, and you can see him actually finishing a lap down there by not crossing the finish line. So it was interesting to see how things all panned out, but it certainly made a pretty spectacular end to the race.
So if you can tell them apart, that's great. I've got to go to Specsavers, but that is Chastanoff just fractionally ahead of his teammate Braden Martin as they cross the start-finish line at probably over 200 k's an hour. Brody Shepherd wanted to get a little piece of it. Of course, it's all in the run off the final corner and the timing, how you pull out of the pretty powerful slipstream of these Formula Fords. Let's chat to our clean sweeping race winner, though. Stuart Vaughan, congratulations. You're off to a ripping start in Ozicar Formula Ford.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Hopefully I don't get stripped of the win in race 1, but surprisingly did well tonight.
What car are you in your profile picture?
That would be a Formula V, so a little bit less power than this thing.
Interesting. So the champion's getting a drive experience in a Formula Ford at Sydney Motorsport Park, are they not? So that would be interesting to you.
Yeah, that would be nice. I'm not sure if it's the champion or if it's just a random person throughout the league, but either way, you get to see someone get a crack in it. I mean, I've been pretty lucky over the last few years to get some opportunities through sim racing, so I'd probably donate it to somebody who I think deserves it anyway if I was to win.
Yeah, interesting, no doubt. Walk us through then, both of the races, because you've got a significant chunk of pit stop strategy about how you try to avoid being in too much traffic and what's obviously a very challenging car on cold tyres as well.
That was basically it, mate. I saw that the cars ahead were closing in and didn't want to risk it, so just started with the pits to get clean air, especially around this place.
And your pit stop in race number 2, very, very flash. How you pulling that off?
I'm not too sure, mate. I just did a bit of practice because I thought that's where some of the time's going to be made. So maybe the other guys just didn't do enough of it.
It was a very, very slick one. And how would you then, describe the feeling from the seat of racing in the packs in these cars?
Well, thankfully I've got a bit of experience with Formula V, so I was able to use maybe some of that. But pretty intense, but as with any sort of racing like this, you just got to be really patient.
Okay, well, congratulations on a very, very strong performance in a 38-car field for the opening round of Formula Ford.
Yeah, thanks, buddy. I'd just like to give a bit of a shout out to Larissa, who didn't actually show up to the Tinder date I was supposed to go to tonight, which allowed me to race. So, pop that.
There's always some great stories in racing. I'm not sure that's one of them, but well done.
Yeah, thanks, buddy.
Okay, very interesting.
Thanks, Larissa. Thank you.
A very interesting chat to our race winner here tonight, Stuart Vaughan. So congratulations on him on 2 race victories to kickstart his Ozicar Formula Ford campaign. But we do bring our second place getter in tonight for both race number 1 and race number 2. Welcome to the commentary box, John Merritt.
Thanks, Jason.
Absolutely cracking performance out there tonight. What a stellar way to make your Aussie car debut in these cars.
Yeah, no, it was a good race. Little incident, I think, at turn 3 in the first race. Had a car blink, but managed to get through and carry on. So Stuart was just supreme. So he was too good. I think mate, I've got to work out those stops. We'll just talk to Hinsey about it then. So we'll do a little bit of homework. I was unfortunately late home tonight and hadn't done any practice. So sort of worked it out as we went.
Yeah, well, qualifying at the start of the night back in P8, so you definitely showed a lot of speed, and then obviously keeping a clean car and making a very smart pit strategy sequence over the course of both races.
Yeah, I think that will play into it as the series goes on, and obviously the variables of the tracks as well, so there'll be a difference with the draft train. But all credit to Ira, it was a good first round for sure.
It was good to see the Pulse Tuning livery up on screen. You had a couple of teammates joining you here tonight as well, so we're making their presence felt amongst the 36 car grid. We're looking forward to seeing you on track again next fortnight's time as we head over to Okayama. I'm sure you'll be back for that, looking to carry on some good form.
Yeah, that's a cracking little track, so I think these will be good fun. But this is certainly a ripping little car too, so enjoyed it.
Do you want to do a quick shout out to any of your teammates, sponsors, or your pit crew that helped you through tonight?
Well, I'm going to sack the pit crew. They were a bit slow, but yeah, Pulse Tuning and Chuka Toyota and the teammates there. It was plenty of fun. So thank you, and thanks to Simspeed for the broadcast.
Well, you guys on track make us look good. We're just here to call the action. So congratulations on a very, very strong performance tonight. Obviously, you'll be back in a couple of weeks' time to carry that through as the Formula Ford campaign continues. But great result tonight, mate, and well done on a stellar performance.
Thanks, Jason. Appreciate it. Cheers.
One more podium getter for us to chat with. Thomas Hinz joins us now. If John Merritt's going to fire his pit crew, I shudder to think what Hinsey's going to do to his.
Yeah, hey Hinsey. Yeah, I mean, the first race was on me. I just went a little too far in the box, and I had to reverse up, so that cost me the time there. But yeah, second race, I'm not sure. I thought I was pretty lined up, but I guess I wasn't. So I guess I will have to get some new crew for the next round. But yeah, no, it was good fun. Yeah, I was mentioning to you before, I did a few laps of this thing when released. I kept meaning to tell myself to do more laps, I never got around to it. So was kind of coming to know a bit, because I hadn't really lapped the car much and got up to speed pretty quick, which was good, so that's good. And first race was good, and obviously the stuff in the stop kind of put me out of chance to battle for that podium, which is a bit of a shame, but still was a good result, which is nice. And then second race, that was about, I don't like the stop and the way time's wrong, but so I think it seems to be a bit random with how that works, a bit of luck involved, but yeah, it was in that battle pack, which was quite intense, and really good fighting with everyone there. It was all very close and very fair, and just trying to sort of bide my time, wait for the last lap, and then on the last lap got through on to third and was hoping that they were going to squabble. Didn't expect them to. I was ready to defend to the death, and then through sudden leap I saw them balk each other and kind of battle, and I was like, that's exactly what I need, thank you very much, and I just it off, so it all worked out perfectly in the second race. Very, very good time.
It's not a long season, but it'll probably feel like one, so that's a reasonable start with some maybe more technically challenging tracks coming up, but less slipstream dependent.
Yeah, I mean, I'm saying to look forward to coming here. I'm keen for those ones where the draft is not as powerful. I think just with the way these cars are, that they obviously can't be, but they're not got a lot of power behind them. It's even at tracks where it's not as powerful the draft, I think it's still going to be hard to break a draft just because they just don't have the pace to get away. So it'll still be a pretty big factor, obviously, but it will be less so than here, where it's just so easy to keep the draft. When I was sitting behind Stuart and that there, then the second race I was lifting for like half the lap because it's just that powerful. So keen for some tracks where it's a bit more technical and less draft dependent. And yeah, hopefully I can just keep it going season long, hopefully.
Rightio, well, we seem to chat with you a lot, and that's probably good for you.
I'll take that as a good thing, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see you around for the rest of the season.
Awesome, see you then.
Podium getters from the final race there. Stuart Vaughan clean sweeping the round. 2 second places for John Merritt, 5th and a 3rd for Thomas Hinz. And this is where you'll catch Ozicar Formula Ford again. It's Monday, the 10th of April in Japan at Okayama. Pretty long back straight there, but some more slow hairpins, technical sections, elevation change around there as well. We'll look forward to that. And certainly round one's great racing will make us look forward to the rest of the championship, which you'll catch here on Simspeed TV every round. And next week, though, the finale of Ozicar Formula 4 at Knock Hill. So lots of Ozicar still to come to screens here on Simspeed TV. Thanks for joining us. Thank you for Sim Racing League's Locked On Lads Prestige Trophy Badge and Engraving and the No Social Hate campaign on board. David Haynes here with Jason Fewens, Jay Kennedy. Good night.
World of Outlaws Dirt Racing is available now. Download your copy today.